Hey fellas, welcome to the final story of Five Nights at Five, Friendly Face. Today, we're covering Together Forever, which apparently, according to a lot of reviews I've read, non-spoiler reviews, obviously, uh, a lot of them have claimed this story is the best in the book. So I guess we'll see, if I agree with that assessment. Let's go. I think a queen should have servants, Jessica said, as she glided to her locker and struck a pose. She examined her bright red nails. I shouldn't be expected to do things like open lockers, especially when these old locks get stuck all the time. Remember last week, when I chipped a nail, I had that zebra polish put on. Remember, Brittany? How could I not? It was tragic. Brittany stared at her own nails, painted purple and gold swirls. She glowered at the combination lock on Jessica's locker. I really think the principal should do something about getting, maintenance to replace your lock, especially now that you've been named Homecoming Queen. I know, right? Royalty should come with privileges. For sure, Brittany agreed, as she opened her own locker next to Jessica's. Jessica scanned the long gray linoleum-floored hallway to see who was looking at her and her best friend. Kids getting ready to go to class, packed in tight around the scarred maroon lockers, chattering and shouting. Lockers slammed, athletic shoes squeaked on the floor. The air was filled with energy and familiar smells. The pine-scented cleaners the janitorial staff had used at night, the cooking aromas drifting down the hall from the cafeteria staff's early preparations, and the occasional rank fart that some crude boy, it had to be a boy, let loose. Everyone was busy, but that didn't mean they were oblivious. They still noticed Jessica and Brittany. Jessica knew that she and Brittany were the prettiest girls in their class, arguably in the entire school. Wow, real humble of you guys. I already love these characters. Which was why they were voted Homecoming Queen and Homecoming Princess, even though they were just sophomores. It had been a delicious controversy when the votes came in. The two seniors claimed the vote was rigged, since there was no way they hadn't been the ones chosen. They demanded a recount, which came out in Jessica and Brittany's favor. They were the royalty. There was no arguing about it. Since then, Jessica and Brittany had been getting even more attention than was usual for them. Take this morning, for instance. Right now, several freshman girls stared at them from across the hall. Two nerdy guys practically drooled over them as they loped by. Jessica never tired of watching her classmates ogle her and Brittany. They all did, boys and girls. Even the teachers stared. Who wouldn't stare? Jessica and Brittany had it all. The shiny blonde hair, the big blue eyes, the high cheekbones, the pert noses, the full lips, the perfect petite figures, and the most up-to-date fashions and makeup to complement all their natural superiority. They were peacocks in a sea of pigeons. Everyone loved to admire their awesome feathers. And they were looking particularly dope today. Over the weekend, they'd hit the sales at the mall and had gotten an amazing deal on the I can't speak French, mini-skirts they wore. The skirts weren't identical, of course. That would be the peak of lame. Jessica's tawny skirt buttoned up at the front. Brittany's chocolate brown skirt had two diagonal zippers that formed a V in the front. Jessica wore her skirt with a cream-colored silk tank, and Brittany wore hers with a flouncy chocolate and black geometric pattern blouse. Jessica had been delighted to discover her new skirt matched a lit, it literally says lit, a lit pair of lace-up booties. I love booty, which made her legs look amazing. Brittany wore black platforms today. They were equally rad. Stop throwing around words that you think are cool. We've had dope, lit, and rad in the same 2 pages. What is going on here? Hey, babe. Jessica turned and flashed her perfect white teeth at her boyfriend, Derek, a senior, the varsity football quarterback. She casually put her hand over her mouth and blew into her palm to check her breath, which was fine, of course. She lifted her cheek for a kiss. Derek's leather Letterman jacket crackled as he threw his arm around Jessica. He brushed his lips against her smooth skin. You smell great. She giggled and punched him in the upper arm. He flexed his muscles and grinned at her. Did you get your suit for the dance yet? She asked him. She'd given him explicit instructions for the type of suit to buy. Color, style, and cut. She knew that would be stellar on him. If he did as she told him, they'd look amazing together on Saturday night. Not yet. Jessica leaned away from Derek and glared at him. The dance is only 3 days away, Derek. You won't be able to get the suit fitted that fast. I thought you were going to get it last week. Derek rolled his eyes. It's not like I've been doing nothing, Jessica. Coach has had us practicing more for the homecoming game, which is only 2 days away, you know. Jessica stepped out from under his arm. She squinted at him. You don't practice all the time. You could have gotten your suit. Derek shrugged. I'll go get something this evening. It won't be custom, Jessica complained. She pushed out her lips in what she knew was a pretty pout. Yo, Derek, Jessica, one of their friends shouted. Jessica turned to flutter her fingers at Chase, the school star's running back. He was trotting past, cradling his history book like a football. She watched his long curly hair fly out behind him as he went, and then shifted her gaze to his butt. Okay. He had a great butt, even better than Derek's. This is something I'm reading in a FNAF book. His face wasn't much, his features were too flat to be called handsome or even cute, but the butt and the curly surfer hair made up for that. Plus, he had the whole star running back thing going for him. This earned him the privilege of dating Stephanie, one of the varsity cheerleaders, and Jessica's second best friend, a distant second best. The truth was that even though Jessica was friends with everyone in the school who was worth being friends with, a certain appearance and status was required to be entitled to her attentions. She'd never be as close to anyone as she was to Brittany, who was her BFF in the truest sense of the word. Was BFF a word? Jessica brushed aside the question. Who knew? Who cared? Gotta go, babe, Derek said. He put a rough index fingertip under her chin and lifted her face so it looked up at his. She studied Derek's dark, handsome features. With his beautiful hair, intense brown eyes, and umber-brown skin, Derek had the kind of good looks that made Jessica's legs go weak. And, of course, Derek knew his powers every bit as much as she knew her own. He and his 6 feet 2 inches of sculpted muscle started through the school's hallways like the king he was. They made an incredibly beautiful couple. Wow. These are like the stereotypical high school couple. People, popular girl and popular guy. I don't know. Everyone we've had in these books has been like, they've all described themselves as being not that great looking. So having this is a very stark contrast. Every character in these books up until now has been the same. They've all said, oh, I'm not great looking, and I'm all kind of poor, and oh, my dad is dead too. This character seems to have everything. So that's different. And I like that. It's a different kind of character for once. Derek gave her a soft kiss on the lips. His breath smelled like the wintergreen gum he was always chewing. She loved the smell. It went perfectly with the icy-scented cologne he wore now, which she bought for his birthday the month before. She knew he hadn't been excited about that, but he loved the leather steering wheel cover she'd also given him. One present he wanted, one present he needed. She knew how to be diplomatic. Even though she loved the smell, the gum did bug her. She didn't think all that sugar was good for him. Oh my goodness, you're not as... Mom, this is just bothering me. Everything about these characters is bothering me. My mother tells me I should eat less sugar. I don't know why you're telling... I mean, you can... Obviously, you can give criticism to your significant other. And I think that that's a pretty normal thing. But it just seems weird to me. I don't know. Sugar, specifically. Anyway, back to the reading. You're gonna get cavities, you know. Oh my... Why... Who... That literally sounds like something my mom would say to me. What is going on? You're gonna get cavities, you know, and all your teeth are gonna, like, fall out when you get old, she told him. He usually ignored her. One day, though, he responded, yeah, and by then we'll both be wrinkled, and we'll have been in together so long we'll probably hate each other. Okay, my mom doesn't say that. So, it won't matter. She hadn't been sure what to make of that. Did he mean he planned to marry her? Did she want him to? She didn't think so. Jessica and Brittany had plans for the future that didn't include Derek or Brittany's boyfriend Roman, also a senior and a football player, the star wide receiver. Sounds like you guys have some very different goals. Sorry, I'm commenting on this a lot more than usual. I just find it interesting. Sounds like you guys have very different goals for the future of your relationship. Sounds like he wants something very long-term and you are not that interested in it, Jessica. Sounds like you guys need to figure out what you want, because you both want very different things here. Admittedly, dating Derek and Roman was great for their status, and having senior boyfriends made their lives super convenient. The boys could drive them wherever they wanted to go in kick-ass convertibles without parental supervision. But that didn't mean Jessica and Brittany had met the love of their lives. Neither of them had those illusions. Derek and Roman would likely dump them when they went off to college anyway, but that wasn't a problem. They could get new boyfriends with the snap of their fingers. Derek started to saunter away. Jessica caught his arm. Derek, could you please open my locker for me? Derek raised a thick eyebrow, but then shrugged and reached out to quickly spin her lock through the combination she knew he'd memorized. The lock clicked open and he pulled it off. Then he yanked on the lock. It jammed as usual. He gave it a slap with the palm of his hand, then gripped it with his index finger and thumb and jiggled it. Finally, it gave way. My hero, Jessica said. Derek rolled his eyes. Maintenance should fix that, he said. Like, I just said that, right? Brittany said. She was standing in front of her open locker, touching up her makeup in the mirror hanging on the inside of the door. "See you at lunch, babe," Derek said to Jessica. "Bye, Britt." He strode away. Jessica watched Brittany swirl her powder brush across her forehead. She was a whiz with makeup. She could make even the angriest of red pimples disappear with little foundation and powder. Not that she had any acne. Like Jessica, Brittany had flawless skin, but she could make the prettiest skin look even prettier. It was a gift. Just as Jessica started to look into her own locker, Brittany's locker door flew shut. Brittany jumped back just in time to avoid being slapped by its sharp metal edge. "What the—" Brittany began. "I'm sorry," a chirpy voice said. Jessica crossed her arms and attempted to skewer the owner of the voice with her best laser-like, "you are pawn scum" look. Mindy, the chirper, didn't even notice. Instead, she laughed. She laughed. The moron. "Cindy and I were thumb wrestling, and my hand slipped on the door," she said, grinning. "I went out of bounds," she snorted. So did the girl standing next to her. Cindy. Jessica curled her lip and shook her head. "Cindy and I were thumb wrestling," she mimicked Mindy's cartoonish voice. In her normal, smooth voice, Jessica said, "Thumb wrestling?" She looked at Brittany, who was reopening her locker in a huff. When she got it open, she threw the door back so it slammed into the frame of the neighboring locker, Mindy's. It slammed so hard that it almost closed itself again. Brittany caught it. "You two shouldn't even, have lockers in this section," Brittany complained. "You're 8th graders." Mindy smiled and shrugged. "It's not our fault the junior high school flooded." "I'm not so sure about that," Brittany said. "You two are so stupid. You probably, tried to flush something down the toilet and backed up the sewer." Jessica had to speak up. "No, Brittany," she said. "They are the things that should be flushed down the toilet." She shifted her attention to Mindy and her friend. "You belong in the sewer, like little sewer rats." She lifted her hands to the side of her nose and wiggled her fingers while she lifted her lip to expose her upper teeth. She made little squeaky sounds like a rat and looked at Mindy hard. Really hard. Any normal person on the receiving end of Jessica's flinty look would be shrinking into a little ball of shame. Jessica's dirty looks were epic. Mindy didn't even flinch. "Wow, I don't like any of these characters. I don't like any of these characters. At all." It annoyed Jessica to no end that neither Mindy nor her look-alike friend Cindy were the least bit intimidated by Jessica or Brittany. And seriously, how too cutesy were those names? Mindy and Cindy. They sounded like the names of poodles or baby dolls, the kind that spoke when you pulled their cords. "Hi, my name is Mindy. Pull my cord again and I'll burp on you." Jessica smiled, remembering how Brittany had laughed her head off when Jessica had said this to her 2 weeks before. Brittany agreed that Cindy and Mindy were good names for dogs and dolls. They weren't good names for real girls. They didn't look like real girls either. Both freckled and redheaded, Mindy and Cindy were small for their 13 years. Both were kind of cute, Jessica supposed, in a ferret or hedgehog sort of way, but she hated how Mindy's cheeks puffed out, and how Cindy's eyes bulged, not to mention their childlike clothes. They both tended to favor things with gingham and polka dots and animal prints and little floral patterns. It made them look like total babies. It was bad enough that the high school students had to put up with these kids in their building because of the reconstruction happening at the junior high. It was worse when those junior high kids looked and acted like grade school kids. Mindy tilted her head and smiled at Jessica. Jessica narrowed her eyes and lifted her chin to make it clear that she was condemning Mindy to less than status. Mindy didn't seem to care. "That was really cute," she said. "What was?" Jessica asked. Mindy lifted her hands to either side of her nose and did the same rat impression Jessica had just done. "Are you, dissing her?" Brittany asked, stepping slightly in front of Jessica as if she was going to defend her physically instead of just verbally. Mindy lifted her eyebrows. "Dissing?" She shook her head. "No, I don't diss. I think it's rude." She shrugged. "I was being serious. It was cute, what she did." She looked at Cindy. "Wasn't it, Cindy?" Cindy nodded her head several times. Her springy curls bounced. The curls were the way Jessica was able to tell the girls apart. Mindy's hair was straight and it hung to just below her narrow shoulder blades. "It was," Cindy said. "I have a gerbil at home, and she looks a lot like that when she's eating a slice of cucumber." She smiled. "Her name is Aphrodite, and she's really cute. Isn't she, Mindy?" Mindy nodded. "She really is." See, it was a compliment, not a diss. Brittany looked at Mindy sideways and snorted. Cindy sneezed, and she didn't even cover her nose. "Ew!" Snot sprayed everywhere. Ah, gross. Jessica and Brittany stepped back in unison. "Get your germs away from us," Jessica snapped. "Don't you know there's a virus going on?" Okay, I added that last part. I'll be quiet now. Cindy sniffled and pulled a tissue from her pocket. "I don't have a cold," she said. Cold came out code. "It's allergies. I'm allergic to dust." Before Jessica could respond to that, Mindy leaned toward Brittany. I really am sorry I accidentally slammed your locker door. I'll be more careful from now on. As if, Brittany said. Mindy flashed a big smile at Brittany and Jessica. Bye, Cindy said. Have a good day. She sneezed again. Jessica wrinkled her own nose. The two 8th graders, both wearing full-skirted short dresses, hurried away. Jessica shook her head in awe. She reached into her locker and pulled a towel from her gym bag. She wiped down her arms, the front of her locker, and the front of Brittany's locker. When she was done, Brittany handed her a disinfecting wipe. Brilliant, Jessica said, wiping her hands. Thanks. She sneezes on my locker all the time, Brittany said. I don't care if it's allergies, it's grody. I know, right? Jessica agreed. Jessica looked down the hall and watched the little redheads go around the corner. How did they take themselves seriously? Mindy sounded like a chipmunk, with her words all clumped together and a slight ch attached to all her S sounds. But Cindy's voice was so high-pitched she sounded like a dolphin. Even her sneezes were squeaky. I totally hate those two, Brittany said. They're beyond neeky. If Uncool and Neeky had a baby, it would still have more chill than those two, Jessica agreed. Brittany laughed. She looked at the gold watch dangling from her slender white wrist. Jess, we need to hurry. We'll be late for history. Jessica quickly reached into her locker and grabbed her history textbook. I'm ready, she said. Jessica and Brittany slammed their lockers in unison and sashayed down the fast-emptying hall. They were hurrying because they both knew anyone who was late for history had to give an oral report on an assigned topic the next day. But they had to hurry without looking like they were hurrying. Royalty didn't hurry. It was all about poise and grace. Jessica and Brittany had both. This was what took their looks over the top. They weren't just beautiful. They had presence. Jessica and Brittany maintained that presence at all times, even when they had to rush to class. Jessica and Brittany made it to history with 4 seconds to spare, but now they were sweeping into the school cafeteria 10 minutes late. The huge room was packed. The buzz of animated conversations nearly drowned out pop music playing from speakers overhead. It looked like the long metal tables were full, but Jessica knew space would magically appear when she and Brittany were ready to sit down. It was sort of like Moses in that sea. What was the name of it? Whatever. It was the way Moses made the waters stand up and get out of the way. Jessica and Brittany had similar powers. All they had to do was walk through the crowd and kids would stand up and make space for them. Even before they were officially named Queen and Princess, they'd had regal powers. Both Jessica's and Brittany's moms were cheerleaders and homecoming and prom queens when they were in high school. This very school, in fact, before it got infected with junior high kids. They went on to become cheerleaders and queens in college, too. Jessica's mom was runner-up in a national pageant as well. Brittany's mom was a runaway model before she married Brittany's dad. It seemed Jessica and Brittany's noble status was in their DNA. Did you put some of those berries we got at the farmer's market in your smoothie? Brittany asked Jessica as they started walking toward the heart of the huge, beige-walled room stuffed with long tables, snarfing kids, and food smells that made their noses wrinkle. Jessica's nose told her the entree of the day was fish sticks, and the side dish was Brussels sprouts with cabbage. Who ate that? As if I'd forget, Jessica said. She elbowed her friend and gave her a pretend dirty look. Brittany laughed. I hope they smell as sweet as they did when we got them. That stinky cabbage is gonna ruin my nose forever. It's beyond disgusting. I know, right? They kept walking through the throng, totally unconcerned about finding a place to sit. And yes, there it was. Jessica smiled when she saw a couple of boys from their English class stand up and vacate their seats as Jessica and Brittany approached. You can sit here, one of them, Evan, said as he stepped away from the table. He was kind of cute in a hobo vibe sort of way. His clothes were always hanging off of him, and they were all retro. But he had great hooded eyes and a fluid way of moving that kept him from being a dweeb. Jessica turned up the amps in her smile and aimed for the vacated space as Evan and his friend walked away. Before she could get to it, though, both of the folding beige metal chairs were taken by Mindy and Cindy. The two girls darted in front from the opposite direction, plopped down, and immediately pulled sandwiches from little kid lunchboxes. Cindy's had flowers on it, and Mindy's had a pink unicorn on the side. Are you, kidding me? Brittany asked. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Jessica and stared at the two upstarts. Just who do they think they are, right? Although the vast majority of kids in the cafeteria were unaware of the colossal faux pas that had just been made, everyone at the table Evan and his friend had just vacated went silent. All the occupants at the two adjoining tables stopped talking, too. Every kid at the silence tables craned their necks to stare at the two red-headed girls. That made 31 pairs of eyes that shifted from the oblivious girls at the table to the dumbfounded girls hovering behind them. Jessica ground her teeth for half a second. Then she remembered that grinding her teeth was bad for them. She set her shoulders and raised her chin. "Excuse me," she said evenly. Her tone was as placid as a lake on a calm day, but it was just as benign as the jagged-toothed eels that lurked below the lake's surface. She'd been bitten by an eel like that when she was a little girl. She knew how surface appearances could be deceiving, and she delighted in being the placid lake in situations like these. It was so much fun to bring out the eels once you got others to relax and think that all was well. Mindy, her pudgy cheeks puffed out even more than usual by whatever food she'd stuffed in her mouth, looked up at Jessica. "Oh, hi." She looked back down at the peanut butter and jelly sandwich lying on plastic wrap in front of her. "Do you really think 'oh, hi' is the appropriate response when someone says 'excuse me'?" Jessica asked Mindy. Cindy looked up from what smelled like a tuna sandwich. She glanced around at all the kids at the table. Her bug-like hazel eyes blinked several times. "What's the matter?" she asked. "Did we break some rule?" She sniffled and pulled out a tissue to wipe her nose. "Seriously, what classes do you two take?" Brittany asked. "8th grade oblivious? Junior level rude?" Jessica chuckled. She loved her friend's sense of humor. Yeah, real funny. Mindy frowned and put down her sandwich. "I don't get what's going on." "That's exactly my point," Brittany said. Jessica pointed at the 2 seats Mindy and Cindy occupied. "Those are our seats." Mindy raised an eyebrow. "They are?" She turned and looked at her seat back. "I don't see names. Did we get assigned seating?" "Oh, you tell 'em, girl, you tell 'em." Jessica widened her eyes. "Are you for real?" The girl sitting next to Cindy, a junior varsity cheerleader named Valerie, a girl Jessica thought had a lot of potential, leaned over and whispered to Cindy. Cindy screwed up her face, whether in confusion or concentration wasn't clear. When Valerie leaned back, Cindy said in her ear-piercing squeak, "Really?" Mindy looked at her. "What?" Cindy pointed at Valerie. "She says these seats were being saved for Jessica and Brittany." She sneezed and then blew into her tissue. Mindy glanced up and looked around the table. She zeroed in on the one empty place in the end. She stood and looked around. Spotting a single empty seat at one of the other tables, filled with kids paused mid-lunch, still quietly watching the unfolding drama, Mindy strode over and grabbed the middle chair. Dragging it back across the linoleum floor with an annoying metallic scrape, she positioned it next to the single seat at the end of the table. She looked at Cindy. "Can you grab my lunch, please, Cindy? You and I can squeeze in here. There's enough space as long as we don't try a chair dance while we eat." She laughed and plopped in the chair she'd stolen from the other table. "Sure," Cindy said. She sniffled, then gathered both hers and Mindy's lunchboxes. She stood and carried them to the small open place at the table next to Mindy. Jessica tapped her foot as she watched the girl's audacious behavior. She glanced at Brittany, who was opening and closing her mouth, as if she was trying to remember how to talk. For several more seconds, Jessica looked from the now vacant chairs to the silly girls at the end of the table. They weren't paying any attention to Jessica or Brittany. They were leaning toward each other, chattering away as if nothing had happened. Jessica sighed and sat down. Brittany settled in next to her. Jessica shrugged and said, "8th graders. You can't live with them, and you can't, kill them." Everyone laughed and returned to their lunches. Jessica shook her head and unscrewed the lid on her sleek, silver, insulated cup. It contained the fruit smoothie she always drank midday. It wasn't like her complexion took no work at all, right? She had to take some precautions against breakouts. Consuming the right combination of fruits and supplements was a must. Brittany agreed with Jessica about that, but usually she drank her smoothie in the morning. For lunch, she liked having a cup of vegetable soup, which her family's cook prepared and placed in a thermal mug and tucked inside a small cotton canvas and rattan tote. It was a stylish carrier, in a save-the-planet chic kind of way. Brittany pulled out her thermal mug and peered into the tote. "OMG, Frida," she sighed. "She, forgot your spoon again, right?" Jessica said. "She so forgot my spoon." Brittany looked around as if she could summon Frida from home to remedy the unforgivable error. Jessica clicked her tongue, then looked down at the table at Mindy. "Mindy!" She said the girl's name the same way she said her dog Titan's name when he tried to dig into her ficus tree planter. At home. The tone was sharp enough to compensate for the fact that it wasn't very loud. Mindy's head shot up. She was chewing again, her round cheeks bobbing up and down in a counter rhythm to her dimpled chin. She looked at Jessica and pointed to herself. Jessica rolled her eyes. "No, the other Mindy?" Mindy looked around the table as if searching for the other Mindy. "OMG," Brittany said again. This time, Jessica knew she was referencing Mindy's complete ignorance. Yes, you, Jessica nodded at Mindy. Could you please get my friend here a spoon, since you delayed our lunch, right? Seems like the least you can do. It is, right, Brittany agreed. Mindy swallowed what was left in her mouth and shrugged. Sure, she popped up. Just a second. She trotted off. Okay, I'm going to interrupt again. Mindy, you do not have to just bend head over heels and do whatever other people ask of you. I know you're just doing it because you want to be nice, but sometimes maybe you shouldn't be nice to people who are so mean to you. That's okay. It's okay to not just bend head over heels. I already said that. It's okay not to do that all the time, especially for people who treat you so badly. That is okay. Be mean to them. Be a jerk, okay? These are bad people. Okay, anyway, back to the story. Jessica leaned toward Brittany. Maybe we could train them to be like what were they called? The maids that helped royal women get dressed. Ladies in waiting, right? Brittany said. That's it, totally. Mindy handed Brittany the spoon and returned to her seat. She went right back to her little kid sandwich as if she hadn't just been ordered around. Jessica smiled and imagined Mindy and Cindy scurrying behind her and Brittany wherever they went. It was a seriously sick image. The rest of lunch passed without incident until Mindy and Cindy got up from the table just seconds after Jessica and Brittany did. All four girls headed to the cafeteria exit. Because Jessica and Brittany had arrived late to lunch and had taken their time, most of the cafeteria had cleared out by the time they got ready to leave. Are they, following us? Brittany asked Jessica, gesturing over her shoulder with her chin. Jessica shook her head. I think they're too spacey to even know they're behind us. She could hear the 8th graders babbling away behind her. They were discussing something about getting a ride from their moms. Hey, babe, Derek called from a couple tables away. Hey, Britt. Next to him, Roman shot a finger at Brittany, then winked at her. He saluted Jessica. Jessica and Brittany stopped to pose for their boyfriends. They did it as a matter of course. It was just what came naturally when the boys were looking at them. Burgers after practice? Derek called. Jessica and Brittany nodded and blew the guys a kiss. Then they turned and glided toward the cafeteria exit. It was always important to leave while you still had them hanging on. As at the exit, Brittany suddenly lurched to a stop and almost fell over. Jessica grabbed her friend's arm and kept her from going down. She also immediately saw why Brittany had almost fallen flat in her face. Mindy was kneeling right in the middle of the exit, tying the rainbow-colored shoelaces on her sparkling purple shoes. As she tied, she babbled at Cindy, who stood next to her. Mom says we can stay at the dance until 11. I'm so jazzed. I had my dress out last night. The ruffles are so pretty. Can you even believe that? Jessica asked no one in particular. Mindy popped up. Believe what? She looked from Jessica to Brittany, who was attempting to slice Mindy to bits with her icy look. What? Oh, I was in the way, wasn't I? Ding, 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 Jessica sang. Huh? Mindy said. Cindy, who had been a few feet from her friend, turned back. What's going on? Mindy shook her head. I was being thoughtless. She smiled up at the older girls. I really am sorry, guys. She turned to walk away. Jessica grabbed Mindy's arm and yanked her out of the doorway. Hey, Cindy objected. Then she sneezed. She glared furiously at Jessica as she dug out a tissue. Mindy didn't say anything. She let Jessica pull her to the side of the last few stragglers coming out of the cafeteria. Cindy immediately rushed to Jessica's side, to Mindy's side. Jessica let go of Mindy's pudgy baby arm. Tell me you were not talking about the homecoming dance just now, because you could not have been talking about that dance. Mindy grinned. Sure, I was talking about the homecoming dance. Everyone's talking about it. You're going to look really pretty with the crown on, I'm sure of it. What color will your dress be? Jessica opened her eyes, then closed it. She turned toward Brittany. Since when do 8th graders come to the high school dances? Before Brittany could answer, one of their fellow cheerleaders, Patrice, brushed past. Oh, don't get me started, you know. You didn't hear that the principal said that as long as they're in classes here, they should be included in the dances? Patrice flipped her shiny black hair and made a face. It's insanity. She struggled and strode away. Jessica turned back to Mindy. She made a face when she got a whiff of Mindy's peanut butter breath. You do know that you're nobody, right? The pale skin between Mindy's reddish-blonde brow was furrowed. Is that like slang for something? Brittany snorted. Jessica shook her head. No, you poor, pitiful thing. It's a fact. You're nobody. You and your bug-eyed friend, you are nobody. You're coming to the dance together because no one asked you out, right? Who would, right? For sure, Brittany said. Mindy's face flushed. Jessica waited for the tears to start. but they didn't come. Instead, Mindy shook her head and smiled. I feel really sorry for you. What? Jessica gawked at Mindy. Really, Mindy said, I'm sorry. You must not like yourself very much. What? This time Brittany joined in with her friend. Brittany's what was even higher pitched than Jessica's. Mindy nodded. She turned to Cindy. Remember what our mom said, Cindy? Cindy bobbed her head and sent her curls shaking. Sure. When kids are mean to you, it's because they really want to be mean to themselves, but they can't. I think Mom said projecting? She sniffled, then blew her nose. That sounds right, Mindy agreed. She looked up at Jessica. It's okay. You can't help it. If it makes you feel better to be mean to us, go ahead. No one likes you, Jessica practically screamed. Mindy looked around at a couple dozen kids who had stopped to watch what was going on. She chewed on her lower lip. Then she shrugged. Well, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, that's okay too, because we like us, don't we, Cindy? Cindy nodded. We sure do. Clutching her snot-filled tissue, she put her arm around Mindy. We're friends forever. We do everything together. Mindy nodded. That's enough for us. She glanced up at the clock above the cafeteria door. Sorry to be rude, but we need to get to robotics class. Mindy and Cindy turned and hurried away. Jessica stared after them, her mouth hanging open. She felt Brittany take her hand. Come on, Jess. We need to get to robotics class, too. Oh boy, here we go, robotics class. Jessica made a sound not unlike the one Titan made when he spotted a squirrel in his backyard. It was a cross between a growl and a groan. I don't know if I can, look at those two for the next hour, she whispered to Brittany. I know, right? Can you even believe what she said? It was like cray-cray. Jessica didn't respond. She was too angry. Projecting, she thought. The nerve of the little... Come on, Brittany said. We'll figure out what to do about them later. We don't want to miss robotics. Remember, Mr. Thornton is assigning our projects today. I don't want something too difficult. Jessica sighed. Good point. Let's go. The robotics classroom was in a mostly deserted wing of the school. Jessica knew the wing still had some storage rooms that were accessed from time to time, but the classroom the robotics was in was the only one being used. The school had a very active art program once, and dance program too, in this wing. But budget cuts had shut down those curricula. Money was funneled into robotics and computer programming instead of the arts, and even that wasn't enough money. The reason their class was using old, donated animatronics was because there were no funds to buy state-of-the-art robotic parts. The classroom didn't get much attention from janitorial or maintenance either. It was usually far too dusty to suit Jessica. But Jessica didn't care either way about the arts or robotics. She wasn't particularly good at computers, painting, or dance. Her forte was form, not function. Oh, and that reminded her. Maintenance should do something about the function of her locker. The robotics classroom was a large, warehouse-like room with tall ceilings guarded by exposed metal beams. The floors were covered with rubberized, interlocking squares, and the metal work tables were bright red. Gray pegboards lined the walls of the room, and every robotic part you could think of hung on hooks from those boards. The room was far too industrial to suit Jessica's tastes, but she tolerated it like everyone else. Even though robotics was a required class for sophomores, and many of Jessica's classmates groused about it, she secretly didn't mind it. Most of the time she didn't really understand what she was doing, but she did think it was fun, and it played into her other strength, control. Of course, she liked control best when she was controlling people, but controlling machines did seem to be a natural extension of that. Even with all her beauty and social skills, Jessica never got everything and everyone around her to act just as she wanted them to. There was always someone who was saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Taking the two red-headed morons, for instance, with her class popularity and physical presence, she should have been able to wrap Mindy and Cindy around her manicured finger. That they didn't afford her the appropriate amount of reverence was like having a splinter just stuck under the skin. She hated it when that happened. She hated Mindy and Cindy even more. The room's red tables sat in rows, 3 tables in each of the 5 rows. Jessica and Brittany took their seats at the middle table in the 3rd row. Not too close to the front so that they wouldn't appear to be geeks, but not too close to the back where they'd be surrounded by outcasts. They always sat where their vaulted status could be recognized. The robotics teacher, Mr. Thornton, a short 20-something man with bird-like features, beady eyes, a pointed nose, and fine brown hair, strode into the class and set a stack of books and schematics on his desk. Jessica shook her head at the red and gold diamond-patterned sweater vest that hung loosely over Mr. Thornton's narrow chest. Between the vests he always wore and his thick, black-rimmed glasses, Mr. Thornton was the poster boy for geeks everywhere. Mr. Thornton looked askance at the class, as he always did. He had a little trouble with eye contact. He never faced straight at the class, and when you talked to him directly, he focused his gaze about a foot above your head. Jessica thought that was kind of endearing in a lovable nerd kind of way. Talk among yourselves for a few minutes. The shipment just came in and I need to supervise the... He trailed off and disappeared into the workroom adjacent to the robotics classroom. There was something else Mr. Thornton did. He frequently left his sentences unfinished. It was weird. Once, Brittany suggested that Mr. Thornton might be an animatronic, one with advanced programming and a minor glitch that prevented him from completing his communications. Jessica thought that was hysterically funny. "What do you want to do about them?" Brittany asked. Jessica blinked and looked at her friend. "What? About who?" Brittany nodded toward Mindy and Cindy, who were sitting at the front row. Jessica looked at the backs of the two redheads. Mindy and Cindy had only joined the class a couple weeks before. Apparently they were part of some gifted class that did robotics competitions. They even worked out of the robotics lab, meeting early each morning before the school day began, and now they were auditing the sophomore class. Little freaks. Jessica opened her mouth to answer her friend, but before she could, a loud clattering and thumping accompanied Mr. Thornton back into the room. The racket came from the wheels of a cart he was pushing in front of him. The cart was piled with things that looked like they should have been either in an old sci-fi movies, amusement parks, or circuses. Momentarily forgetting Mindy and Cindy, Jessica sat up straight and leaned forward to see what was on the cart. She spotted a couple of silver robot skeletons, vaguely man-shaped gray robots that looked like aliens, and several mechanical animals. Many were dog and cat-shaped, and a few looked like miniature barn animals and exotic animals. She spotted a cow, a horse, an orangutan, a black panther, a flamingo, a huge pink pig. The pig was only a life-size thing of the cart. The cow, horse, and panther were about the same size as the dogs and cats. All the mechanical animals looked like they were designed to stand on their two back feet, and most wore some piece of clothing or accessory, reminding her more of sport team mascots than real animals. Jessica saw a couple of bow ties and vests, two feather boas, short pants with suspenders on the flamingo, a bowler hat, striped socks, and a pair of red gloves. The pig was the closest to being fully dressed. It wore what looked like a frilly waitress uniform in a shade of pink just a little darker than its fuzzy pink skin. Atop its broad head sat a pillbox-shaped pink cap with a ruffled edge. Other than the outfit, and the fact that it had fuzzy pink hands instead of hooves, it looked a lot like a real pig. "Okay, class, let's get started on today's," Mr. Thornton said. He gestured at the cartload of robotic characters he just dragged in, and grinned sideways at the class. "What we have here is a vintage animatronic bonanza." He uttered one of his rare laughs. Jessica winced. She was glad his laughs were rare. They sounded like a tortured mouse. Mr. Thornton sobered. "None of these animatronics function at the moment, but every one of them is capable of... Well, you'll partner up, and each partnership will be able to get one of these to work on, so you'll have two jobs to do. First, do whatever is needed so your animatronic will function as it's supposed to, and second, program it so it performs some specific task. You will then either have it perform for the class or videotape it if the function is done outside of class where we can't... Each one of these has something to teach us, so let's..." He moved over to the cart and pulled out one of the small dog robots. It wore a yellow dog sweater. This dog is an example of an animatronic that uses servos, and we all know that servos are controlled by... Mr. Thornton looked up over the top of the class and pushed his glasses up onto his nose. "Anyone?" Mindy raised her hand. "Servos are controlled by sending an electrical pulse through the control wire." "Good," Mr. Thornton said. Jessica rolled her eyes. "When a servo goes bad," Mr. Thornton continued, "it's usually because of one of 7 problems we discussed yesterday. Does anyone want to give a review?" He pointed at Cindy when her hand shot up. "Contamination, like from oil or coolant. Bad bearings, electrical degradation, poor installation, like the belts are too tight or the couplings are worn out, a bad power supply or drive, damaged cables, or overload." "Good," Mr. Thornton said. "So, this dog," he set the animatronic dog on his desk, "has a bad servo. Cindy, you and Mindy can take this." Cindy and Mindy clapped their hands like 5-year-olds. Mr. Thornton grinned at the spot above their heads and set the dog on the table in front of them. Mr. Thornton turned to the cart and grabbed the orangutan, a goat, and a cat. "More servo issues with these. Let's see who..." Mr. Thornton parceled out the robotic animals. Brittany leaned close to Jessica and whispered, "Do we want to work on a servo problem?" Jessica shrugged. "Whatever." Mr. Thornton returned to the front of the class after handing out several of the mechanical animals. Although servos have a lot of pros in terms of their functionality, Mr. Thornton said, stopping by the cart, there can be noise issues with... He reached out and grabbed the animatronic flamingo. He activated it, and when it moved its legs, the mechanism screeched. Mr. Thornton turned it off. Pneumatic setups, by comparison, are fairly quiet, and he got up and approached the cart. Wrestling with the exoskeletons and human-shaped animatronics, Mr. Thornton unburied the pig at the bottom of what was left of the pile. Now that it was lying on its back on the cart alone, Jessica could clearly see the pig's pink pot belly, stubby legs, and sweetly smiling face. The mechanical pig was old. Jessica could see glinting silver showing through the pig's pink felt layer here and there. I'm guessing that's going to be theirs. I think we'll leave it at that. The premise of the story, as it says in the back of the book, is Jessica fixes up an animatronic, and I'm assuming it's going to go very, very wrong, which sounds like it could be cool. Kind of wish it was a little bit of a more interesting animatronic. I don't know why we keep getting these, like, super underground, little-known ones. This could be, like, Bonnie or something. It could be Bonnie that she's repairing. Come on, anything. An interesting character, not one that we don't really know very well. But whatever. It should be interesting. I'll continue this next time. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.